I was so happy to be asked by the Meany Center to be an artistic partner and to curate a series of concerts. The way that I approach curation is I think about what is important to me, because why was I asked and not somebody else, right? I'm not looking for what do I think should fit in this market or whatever, because I'm like, they're not asking me for that. They're asking me for, what do I want to present? What do I want to highlight? What do I want to say? Maybe you didn't think about this because you don't know about it, but let me show you. I'm also interested in people who are kind of standing in crossroads and interested in represent a very strong tradition, but are also very interested in other traditions and where they meet. That's just something, as a mixed person, as someone who's very interested in a lot of things, that I respond to that. So to be able to present Niweld Sumbu and the group of musicians that he's collected was really important to me, because I think he is somebody who stands at a crossroads. He lives in Ireland. He's from the Congo. He's lived in Ireland for a very long time, and he is someone who holds a lot of traditions in his fingers and in his soul. But he is he's kind of voracious appetite for other kinds of music.
I love to collaborate. As much as playing my own music, I love to always play with other people and get new ideas and meet at a point where it just goes beyond just the music,
Through working with him in my band and also in Silkroad, I've just discovered that he's just one of these really unique individuals, and also is representing the face of the new Ireland. Ireland for a long time was an exporting country. People left, and they immigrated out. And that's still happening, but there are also now people immigrating in and becoming part of the fabric of Irish cultural life and bringing their own traditions, while also kind of rejuvenating and adding and bringing new things to the Irish tradition. And I think he's just one of the newest exciting chapters in that. For me, the idea of Indigenous culture, the important thing that I feel like I bring is the awareness of all the different, there is no monolithic Indigenous culture, like anywhere in the world, right? And when you talk about native cultures to America that were here before Columbus, it's as different as anything else, So people on the East Coast were different from people on the West Coast, different from people in the Plains, different from people in the Northeast, different from people in Florida. So for me, being from North Carolina and being a fan of Portafe, who started the group Eulalie, which was a Native women's group, singing group, who kind of reclaimed the hand drum.
Many touched the older people, they ended up southeast. Got by the exploitation, sold around disease. Those who escaped removal and slavery survived the years by sacrificing tribal identity.
She's been such a leader and such a beacon for a lot of Native women. And one of her proteges is Charlie Lowry, who's Lumbee Tuscarora from North Carolina, and Portafe is Taino in Tuscarora. And to have them together, they're just, incredible powerhouse singers. And for me, like, both of them are kind of conduits to ancestors. They start to sing and you just feel the rootedness. And I just think that's something people need to hear. In a just world, they'd be known everywhere. But those of us who've known about them all along, when we get a platform, that's when we use that platform. So that's what I'm doing here. The Silkroad Ensemble is something that has come into my life since the pandemic, and I was brought in as the artistic director in 2020. So one of the things when I came on board was that, in the history of Silkroad, it's very male-dominated, in a lot of the history. And the opportunity to highlight and showcase women and non-binary members of the ensemble, is just a no-brainer, because there's just so much brilliance there. And so there's a program, Uplifting Voices, which I thought was a great fit for the Meany Center. And, I'm continuously astonished by the brilliance of these folks. For me, the boundaries are not just from like blues and jazz and Americana, whatever. They're also crossing over into classical music, because that's something that was my only degree is in classical singing. And so I've been looking at ways of how do you cross that boundary in ways that feels historically grounded and also fresh and new. And so I met Laura Downs years ago. She's a beautiful pianist, and she is in the same boat, as a pianist, looking at how do we look at some of these composers who've been overlooked, like Florence Price and Margaret Bonds, and these composers of color who managed to compose these beautiful things and managed to have some sort of career, but just have not gotten the care that other American composers, of the same time have gotten. This is not new, like the renaissance of Black composers, like this is not new, and so she's there to kind of ring that bell and to go, remember Florence, remember? So that's really exciting to have her on this program. And of course, I've had such a wonderful opportunity to work with like-minded women, and Layla McCalla is no exception to that. And I've known her for a long time. She was a Carolina Chocolate Drop back in the day. And she is a multi-instrumentalist. She's a brilliant instrumentalist and a wonderful singer and composer. And she was one of our native daughters, and she represents a different kind of banjo tradition. So the banjo is something that a lot of people kind of focus on, the bluegrass, sort of old-time part of the banjo, but like the banjo actually, like even when you talk about the history of it as a Black instrument and coming out of the African diaspora and the Caribbean, it also just took over the world. Like everybody used to play the banjo. It was in all these different arenas. Black people, white people, brown people, like everybody played the banjo, and it was used for blues and jazz and all sorts of things, ragtime. And so she represents the 4-string banjo tradition and plays a lot of like New Orleans tunes on that, and that's almost forgotten. So she obviously also plays cello and plays guitar, and really talks a lot about her folks are from Haiti, so she's second generation, I think, and so that's a big part of her her cultural background and what she brings to her music.
C'est nous qui boulanger, c'est nous pouler l'enfant. C'est nous qui faisait nat là, c'est nous dormir à tes bagages, c'est la pas capable tirer. Travailler dit en mou. Remercie pas nous, c'est coup de bâtonnier. Mais autres chita soudan, y a d'autres.
I think when we think about music, especially now, the idea of art and then entertainment and now distraction, really makes me think we have to double down on what human beings have gotten from music for so long, which is really, I don't think I'm exaggerating by saying it's like nothing less than soul and spirit healing. That's what music is for.